Tonight we're going to do a recording of the video on how to make an offset sectional view of 9 of 24, which is this drawing over here on the right side of the screen. We already did a few drawings. We did one for 1 of 24, and this drawing is in inches, and that drawing was in inches. So instead of redoing all the dimension standards and everything, for those of you that are using our computers instead of your own computers, because all the settings that we made, the adjustments to for dimensioning in the first drawing we did, part 1 of 24, all those settings go away when you turn the computer off. If you want to carry those settings over, the best way to do that is to open up that original drawing of the one where everything is perfectly done. And then you do something that you must do. It's called File Save As, and change the name of the file to the next drawing. The back end doesn't change. It's this one. Part 9 of 24. When you hit save to that, 9 of 24, you can then go ahead and eliminate the different views. And everything is good. When you hit save on this thing now, okay, the other drawing still does exist. It didn't totally disappear. So when you go to File and you go to Open, 1 of 24 is still there. It has not lost anything. But now you have 9 of 24 here, which retained all of those setting changes. That's my quick and simple way of telling you to do the work. Don't rebuild from scratch each time, because when you start new up here, remember what happens. File, new, here, you'll end up with whatever template comes with the software, not the one you created. Okay? So that's why I'm saying that to you. Next, when I go ahead and bring in my base view, this time we're going to go hunt this puppy down. This thing's on the desktop, if I remember correctly, where we stored it. Your turn. 9 of 24 is here. The model for this was already done. Now again, back to that conversation. Scale. See how the view looks? Hey, let's see what 1 and 1 looks like. Ooh, that's kind of big. 1 and 1 might be a little too big, especially when I start adding dimensions. Half? No, it's kind of tiny. We need somewhere in between. You can always highlight it, and let's say we want 3/4. 3/4. Put in the fraction. That doesn't look that bad. You can type in 5/8. If I don't like it, double click on it. Instead of 5/8, what up? You see what I'm saying? Just put in the scale. Unlike AutoCAD, and when we are in a 2D parametric, non-parametric product like AutoCAD or hand drawings, you got to sit there and fiddle with it and figure it out. Now that's where the math really matters on that side, because you can do a quick job of fiddling with it by just doing the math. Here, you can play with the numbers and just back and forth until you find a scale that works for you. I do think, though, if you understand how to do scale in general, this becomes easier. So you can find a scale faster, no matter what software you're in. Whether it's a parametric product where you can literally fiddle with it a long time, or a hand drawing where you really do have to sit and do the work to figure it out. So in this case, I am almost inclined to think 3/4 could work. Might be too big, we'll find out. That's the view that came out as the default view, because that is the primary view. When I project from this view, I can get this view, and for fun, we'll go ahead and get the isometric, and we'll drop that up there. When you're done with dropping your views, you right mouse button and hit create, and then there they all are. Now I have to ask the question again, like we had before. When we look at this drawing, do we really need all these views? The isometric we can put in there and just change its scale to something that is more reasonable to fit in here. Quarter might be too small. Half scale, maybe. Yeah, we'll drop it up here in the corner and see what happens. Okay, now we've got these two views. This view is useful, this one right here. But this other view might not be so useful. Okay? This I will suggest becomes the offset sectional view. What we consider the front view. So that view I'm going to delete, but watch what it does. When you delete the primary view, it's going to ask you, do you want to delete view 5 and its dependents? Now appreciate the reality that this was the first view that was dropped in this drawing. So when you say yes to this, do you think you're going to remove the other view as well? If I say okay, do you think this view is going to disappear? The right side views. Remember, we put that in afterwards. We projected it from this view. So you're correct. For all of you nodding your heads in the positive, you bet. They're both going to go bye-bye. And to prove the point, there we did it. It's gone. So we have to undo. Okay? So when we want to delete a view that is actually the primary view, you have to, of all things, hit the little down arrow here and say no. Click on this. It toggles back and forth. Yes, no, yes, no. You want it to be no. So when you hit OK, this view stays. That's step 1. Okay. Step 2. When you do section, and you just do section like we did with the last one, and you let's say you start here and you track up here, and literally just go through the middle like we did with the last drawing, right mouse button and continue, you end up, drag you over here, you end up with a full sectional view that looks like this. But I want to show a sectional view that defines the fact that this object here also has a counter bore in it with a hole that goes all the way through. I can't see that in this view at all. So that's when I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to fix this to show that. So the way to do that is to show an offset sectional view. It's the same command. It's just what you do when you're in it. So when you are in sectional and you pick the view, you position your mouse but you don't click, drag your mouse up, then you go through the object. But you see how I went just to its tip? See how I went just to its tip? Then you go across, and really what you're trying to do is track. This is the annoying part. You're trying to track to where these two intersect. Which is right there, which is a very odd position, but that's where it tracks. And then you slice through the object. When you do right mouse button and continue, now you will get an offset sectional view. But when you look at this offset sectional view, you see a few things. One, you see that this goes here, which means it went past the part. Because it went past the part, in here you literally see a little bit of the outside of the part. If you don't want to see that, and you also see a little bit of a curve underneath. Why? Because I think I stopped my line short, which I did. And the reason that's there is because I think this rib is a little high. So let me go into the part and see where the rib is. Oh, it doesn't look bad. So let me check its dimensions. Yeah, it's done to exactly what the client said. The client specified 1.23 right there, and the 3 right there. So that's where it ends up. So it's fine. It's in the correct location based on the specs provided. So when we go back to this, the way to change this look, if I delete this, watch what it's going to do. It's going to delete the view. Is how you make that cut. So you're going to do a zigzag and a zigzag. I'll show you. You position your mouse to the center, drag it up, drag it through. This time I'm going to be careful to make sure I get to the bottom of the chin, as I'll call it. Drag it out a bit. And I'm going to do this intentionally so you can see what's going to happen. I'm going to drag it down in the middle of the part. I'm going to drag it across, tracking it across right there. And then I'm going to drag it all the way through. Right mouse button, continue. I'm going to go over here. Now you're going to notice it says view identifier. See this? It says C. Why does it say C? I haven't even dropped one finished sectional view in here, but it's all the way to C. Remember, the first one we dropped in was a full sectional that I deleted. That was A. Second one was the offset sectional that I didn't like. That was B. Get it? Even though you've deleted each one of those sectional views and you're putting a third one in, it keeps letter counting. A, B, C, D. So if all of a sudden you find yourself putting in view, sectional view M, and it's your first sectional view, that means that's how many times it's reached the letter M. You can always change it. Right here. You can change it back to A. Don't worry. That's the easy part. Then you can drag it out here and you're good to go. So that looks kind of good. It does still have a little bit of an issue here, and that's not going to be something we can solve. The reason I tried to be so surgical there is I wanted you to see the, how do I create a sectional view where I can see that backbone not sliced through. To be honest, it's very difficult. You see that? To make it look good, you lose somewhere because of the nature of where these objects align in the back. But the other thing that you're going to find out is everywhere I have a change in direction, I have a line. That is not the traditional method of showing an offset sectional view. So the traditional method is you show the sectional. It's so much easier in hand drawings. So those of you who have the hand drawing class, you're like, oh my God, it's so easy over there. Why is this so hard here? Because it is. This is parametric. You're actually taking the physical object, and it's like you're taking it to a bandsaw and trying to cut it. In the real world, when you cut something, it doesn't cut the same way as it does on a piece of paper when you're drawing it out, and you can ignore the real world. That's where the difference is. So it is very difficult to draw a good sectional view. So sometimes when some people throw their hands up and they're like, no. My customer wants to see that we go through both products, so that's what both elements. So that's what I'm going to show them. So there's a bit of a learning curve when you are dealing with objects like this, where you just say, look, I'm going to do a traditional sectional. I'm going to do a sectional view the way I would normally do it, like this, and not try to be all surgical about it. And you accept the reality that you're going to see this oddity. Why? Because of how the cut is made. But you have to accept that. That's the hard part. You have to accept this, and this has to stay there because of the way this cut was made. Now here's the interesting part. If I drag my cut down, my cut goes down there. Drag my cut up, cut goes up. See that? That is literally how this works. This is an offset sectional view of a relatively complicated part, and it's not pretty. Sorry, it just isn't. So you accept this, and I accept it too, and I'm telling you that because I'm going to see drawings from you that will be something like this, and that's okay. So here's the sectional part. The detailing, again, I pick this view, right mouse button, retrieve model annotations, drops in all my stuff, hit apply, done. Now you just got to clean it up. The different radii, this, the 3-inch reference. You've got these different, now notice the arrows, aren't they beautiful? It retained all the elements from the other drawing, all the expectations. The 3-inch I want in the other view. Now watch what happens. Remember how I said in the previous drawing, you have to delete the dimension in the one view before you can drop it in another view. To prove the point, I'm going to do it. I'm going to retrieve model dimensions. The only dimensions it will drop in this view are dimensions that do not exist in the other view. In order to see 3 on this side, I got to delete it from this side. Now when I say retrieve model dimensions, boom, 3 appears. Now, you might ask, what's the point? So what if I don't get the model dimension? Who cares? I'll just drop it in myself because I can. In Annotate, I can drop all my dimensions all I want. These are real dimensions, meaning they actually modify the object. They're not simply there for fun. They are literally dimensions you can use. Meaning, I'm going to pull this up just to emphasize the point. There's this half-inch dimension right here. When I double-click on this, I get nothing other than tweaking the dimension appearance and things like that. But when I do right mouse button and hit Edit Model Dimension, see how it's half an inch? See how it says half an inch? Watch. I'm going to change it to 0.75 and hit Enter. It physically changed the shape. Did you see the change? Okay, watch. Before. After. Get it? Do you see it now? Nothing up my sleeves. I'm wearing sleeves today. Shirt with sleeves. Before. After. It literally changes the object. Not just in the detail drawing, but the literal model changed. That's the power of making sure your model dimensions stay in your detail drawing. That's why you want to not drop in dimensions manually, because those dimensions don't drive your drawing. If your customer comes to you and says, look, change it to half inch, you can literally change it in your detail drawing right there and change it to whatever you want it to be. And it updates your detail drawing and your model all at the same time. Everything. That's the power of the software. This is what I mean about wanting to use the software to its advantage so that you do less work. The power of this product is in the modified side of the house. It's never in the act of drawing, the act of modeling. It's always in the act of, I need to change something on this thing. That's where you start seeing the real power of the software. For those of you who are getting into Revit or using, are you guys using Revit yet? Yeah. That's what it is. Did you see that? It's about the power of it's this for architects. Inventor, we did it before the architects, and they realized, hey, wait a minute, we should do that. I want to be able to update bill of materials that fast. Let's use that over here. So that's what they did. They took Inventor and made it architect friendly. In essence, when you think about what happened there. They architecturalized it. This guy, 1.23. When you double click on it, all you're doing is changing its presentation. You're not changing the actual dimension. You have to right mouse button and pick Edit Model Dimension. So if 1.23 is no good and they say, no, I want it to be 1.5, look what it did. It made it 1.5. And whatever parameters you had were good, because you see how it updated without blowing up. Now if I try to pick something really bizarre, let's say I change this diameter. Again, don't double click. Right mouse button, Edit Model Dimension. Let me make it 2.5. I want to make it barf. It's still you did a good job.
What if the Edit Model Dimension option doesn't show up?
That means it's a dimension that you put in there. You have to click on it once, right mouse button, and Edit Model Dimension. If it doesn't appear, let's say, hypothetically speaking, I had put in this dimension but forgot. Okay, I just dropped it in. This dimension, right mouse button, I'll never get a choice. If I hit let me click on this right mouse button. I'll never get that option.
So it has to be a dimension you put in.
No, it has to be a dimension that was put in using retrieve model annotation. If it's not a dimension that was brought in this manner, it won't work in the way that I'm showing you. Okay? Because it's real easy to go ahead and drop in dimensions. Just do them by yourself. Because that's like if you've ever done AutoCAD, you're like, oh, I'll just put in my dimensions, who cares? Don't. That's what I'm trying to curb your enthusiasm to do that. Because the more you use the model dimensions, the more power you have with the software. That's what I'm getting at. That's where the real control of the software comes in, is when you do stuff like this. So back here, the only thing that's missing is the angle. And that should be in here, because wasn't that in the original sketch? Yeah, that's in the parent sketch right there. So for some reason, that particular item, maybe because it was initially as a sketch, didn't appear in here. This 3 must have been somewhere else in your model. Yeah, see, it was there. So nowhere else is the 15 degrees. It's just not anywhere in the model, except in that base sketch right here. But that base sketch is not an extruded object, so therefore that 15 degrees doesn't appear in here. So that you would have to add in, because I don't see it in here. That is a dimension that you would have to add in. So we're trying to get 15 from 0, which means it's this to this. And that's a manual dimension that's thrown in there, guys. Okay? Now you can probably dimension it off the, if I have to get a little picky, I could probably dimension it off the front face. That doesn't look good though. I probably put it back here from a presentation perspective. I think it looks good back there. And a lot of it, you see how I said I think it looks good back there? It'll look better. You hear that when you hear me saying stuff? Is there a down, you know, it has to be exactly in this one spot, or that? No. Yeah, I could drop that dimension in a couple of places. What's critical is when you don't want this dimension, you don't want it doing this crazy stuff. See that? You want this to be somewhere that's reasonable. You don't want it inside itself like this. Those are the kind of things you want to avoid. Outside of that, it's a function of you want it to be out, away from the part. You don't want the lines touching the part, the dimensions, those extension lines. So that way you generate a clean drawing. This dimension here, for example, back here, it's annoying, but it's actually acceptable. Why? It's the only way to show that dimension without showing the back view, because that's the other way. See that 0.31 dimension back there? That's defining the width of that back, this back piece. The only other way to show that back piece is to actually show one more view. And a lot of times adding a bunch of extra views, like if I go and do one more view just to show the back of something, isn't necessarily meaning anything. If the only thing that I'm doing this for is to show the thickness of this, I would show it in another view. If that's the only thing I'm adding, that's the only reason I want that view. If it's a weird looking object, that's a different story. Then you need to show the back view. All we're doing is showing the thickness of a rib. What you can do though, and this doesn't take a lot of effort, and it doesn't take up a lot of space either, is you can show, for example, ooh, that's interesting. Did you see that? How about that for an interesting view? Look at that. Look at that sectional view. Interesting, eh? That's a tough sectional view to look at. I would probably say if I was going to do Let's see if there's, you see how you can project off of any view. That's not bad. What do you think of that? See that? So that way you could show the backside. What's your opinion of that? Not bad. Different. So you can actually do that and add multiple isometrics to get the point across, is what I'm trying to get at. That particular projection's a little difficult. I wouldn't probably tell you to do a two-step projection, meaning, let's see if I could do this. That one will be that one, that's that one. See how I'm trying to see which way to do a view like this and do a projection there. That's a nicer one, off of there. See that? That shows a nice clean view of the backside. But watch what happens. When I delete this view, because it's isometric, it didn't delete the isometric. But if it was a full right view, an additional view, or an additional view after that it would have deleted. This, again, the scale. I forgot what scale we picked the little guys at. Was it a half scale? Is this one half scale? Yeah. So you see how you could do the front and the back? That's nice if you did something like that. Then you'd have the visual front and the visual back. And then the dimensions. See that? That would be a good description to the customer. That would be a good way of explaining it to the customer. All right? It's an offset sectional view. It's done correctly. You might not like it, but it is correct. What's missing is what? Not dimensions. It might be missing a dimension or two, but the other stuff it's missing is what? Center lines. Remember, when I want a center line through here, if I tried to use this method, that actually will work. Nah, not really. I use this method more when I want to be at the center of two lines, this line and this line. Done. See that? It's just faster. See that? To me, it's just faster. That's why I do it that way. If I want to throw in those centers. Do I need those centers in this sectional view? Do I need those center lines in that sectional view? Technically, in a sectional view, I can eliminate them. They don't need to be in there. But I'll throw them, I'll leave them in there. Technically, I can with or without them. Ooh, that's not a good choice. I could go both ways. So let me undo. That I didn't like. I want to pick a circle. That way I get my centers in here. See that? In there, I do want my centers to appear. I need my centers to go past the part. The green nose tells you where the centers are. And I want my dimension to end. There you go. Come on, you. Where's my node? There's my node. There you go. No, it keeps bouncing. You see how it keeps bouncing? There we go. Just outside of the part. It's tough to get it to do that, by the way. This is an example of where you'd put a center line through the middle of an object that's not round. Because you notice how it's dimensioning to nothing? There we go. It's technically dimensioning to nothing. Do you see that now? I need a center line between these two objects. Or, better yet, I need my center mark from here extending through the center. But that doesn't look like a center mark down there, does it? So that's not helping me. I do need a center line. Sometimes you try, and you get something that looks correct, and sometimes not. So that you want to drag out, and this you want attaching to that. See that? You want it off a little bit. This one you can't do anything about because the cut line is in the way, so you leave that one alone. See that little fine tuning? You want to have to drop in all the dimensions and do the fine tuning? No! No, 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 no. You want to minimize the amount of extra work that you're doing. Because all this extra work, which is being done because that's the typical standards of how you want to present a drawing to somebody, that's work. I've had engineering managers who don't understand that CAD doesn't follow the same rules as hand drawings, insist that their people do drawings like the center lines have to be dead center in every circle, and I'm like, you know, that requires them to actually draw manual lines. That's not logical. Yes, CAD's not perfect in presentation, but it gets close. And there's certain things that you have to accept when you move to a CAD product. And this is one of them. Your center lines won't be perfect, so you have to drag them out. They'll be close, but they won't be perfect. You will have to pull your dimensions out. Those are just, that's what you got to do. This, however, this says a diameter of 8. Do you notice how the inside isn't even dimensioned? This is incorrect. So you got to go to hole and threads to make sure it pulls in the correct info. There you go. See that? That's the correct information on that. Now, what you will have to remember also is that whole business about typical. Remember typical? If I have an item and I'm going to edit this model dimension, am I editing the model dimension and typing stuff at the end? You see how it turns red? No, I'm not editing the model. What am I editing? This is when you double click. I just want to add to the end of it what? Typical, right? See that? And I hit OK. So it adds that to it. Typical. This, radius of 0.88, double click on it, and at the end of that, I can say typical. Not 9 typical, but typical. Cool? See that? When it comes to that counterbore information, I'm kind of running out of room up there. So I'm going to throw my counterbore note down here. Move that over just a little bit. There's my counterbore note. Could even put it right there. That's acceptable. See how it's like a little finesse? It's like wherever you want, but make it look nice. See how I'm balancing? This is that artistic side. Some people might say, no, I don't want that dimension to interfere with where this object begins. You'll hear everything. And it does depend on whatever your boss says, is the way I'm going to phrase it. If they don't want it there, just say thank you. Yes, I'll move it. Okay, so there you have diameter through. Now this one as well. At the end of everything, this one, how do you want to phrase it? How's it phrased in the image? 3. See how it says 3x? So here you could say 3x. Because that's how they said it in here. 3x. 3x, blah, 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 blah. See? No problem. Cool? Instead of typical, they said 3x. The other ones, they said typical. This one, they didn't say anything. They just assumed we knew. We always know what assume stands for, right? Not a good one. And that's it. That's what this drawing will look like. But you notice how you have freedom on where you position things. This one, 3/4 scale, actually worked. It actually worked. Now, if you think that something else needs to be added, go right ahead. Don't worry about it. Go ahead and do it. But that's roughly what it will look like. I think that as a class we'll agree having this back view is much better than what they gave us, which was nothing. Because that backside was a mystery. We didn't know what they want. At least if we show them this, they can say, that is not what I wanted. Well, you tell us what you want then, dear customer. Cool? So we gave them enough of whatever it is they wanted. This I'd probably move down. Yeah, should I move it off apart? Yeah. I don't like dimensions inside of a part, I must admit. I really don't like it in there. There isn't a clean place to put this thing. I think anywhere you put it, it's in the way. So at least in there seems to be the least, the most out of the way? It's not ideal, that I will admit. That 0.31 dimension is not ideally located. Okay? If you come up with a better presentation, by all means, go right ahead. This was just an example. This isn't the only way. Detailing, again, is its own little art. And that's it. That's the video on making this detail drawing of an offset sectional view.